And welcome back. So, our wonderful friend Rickman was investigating the door at the south end of the Dark Lord Shrine Room after they'd just finished fighting the shadows. And as she approaches, she goes to start picking the lock, and as soon as she grabs the handle, she realizes this is a mimic, as it attacks her and throws her into the middle of the room, back into the shrine room. And I just keep initiative. We didn't re-roll or anything like that. And after a couple of rounds against this mimic, I believe Rickfin has decided that she's going to try to jump over the mimic and bolt for the door behind it, just trying to bypass this thing. And as soon as, of course, she makes I gave her an acrobatics check, and she passed, of course. She's highly dexterous. And makes her attempt. Oh, yeah, as soon as she tried to leave the threatened space of the mimic, I gave him an attack of opportunity, and I critted. So she's down, and getting sucked into the maw of this horrible, grotesque mimic. And the party's fighting it off, and was Delg that decided to grab her and tear her free of the mimic and kind of cast her to the side so it wouldn't eat her. And after that combat, they did decide to continue on. They still hadn't taken a rest, so they move on to the cult leader's den. Nothing huge to speak of here, but it does lead into the cult leader's quarters. And I decided that since we had just had two combats back to back, the party wasn't feeling too good anyway. This is where you could optionally, not even optionally, as written, two guests, Gustav and Elizabeth Durst, would bust through the wall as soon as you tamper with the footlocker in this room. But I didn't do it because I figured time and pacing, we didn't need another medium-sized combat that just wouldn't, I didn't feel it would add anything to the story. So they're rifling through this room. They're kind of just tossing the room, and Rickfin's looking under the bed. Delgin and the rest of the party is going through the footlocker, while Agmund and Graham are digging through this table in the corner and flipping it over. They find the key that they... I'll go back. I forgot to mention. They had attempted to go down the stairs prior to this, and I had stated that there was a locked door that Rickman had attempted to pick the lock on, and albeit unsuccessfully, broken one of her lockpicks. So after finding this key, after fighting the mimic and all that, they move on down to the reliquary, and they decide they're going to let Rickman, scout ahead and go down the stairs first. And she makes her way into the reliquary and starts, going through the different little vestibules where things are being set up on shelves by the cultists. And she sees the mummified goblin hand, and so she doesn't really want anything to do with that. Moves on to a knife carved from human bone, a dagger with a rat's skull. She likes that. They find another Nothic eye, and by this point they realize that she's not going to come back and tell them, no, the coast's clear. She hasn't shouted out in pain or called for them in any way, so they just decide they're going to follow down behind her. And the paladin Berdrick decides he's going to take this Nothic's eye and smash it into dust with his warhammer, which, I just had him roll against it. And I gave it an arbitrary AC, and whatever he connected. If he rolled anything other than a 1, I was going to say he hit it. It's sitting there in front of him. And, I forgot. We'd come back from a cigarette break, and there was a note behind my DM screen, and it's from Jason, our new dwarven sorcerer, letting me know that he has cast prestidigitation on the Nothic eye that she has taken, the crystal orb that the vampire statue was holding out. And every hour, on the hour, it's going to leave a resounding musical note. And I use Sirenscape for all of my in-person campaigns. And, of course, it's got the big drama hit on there as one of the selections. So I tell her about every, what I would consider in-game hour or whatever, I hit this note and say, oh, goodness, there's a note emanating from your backpack. Music emanating from your backpack. And yeah, she's completely buying it, hook, line, and sinker. She thinks that the the orb's got some sort of magical property that hasn't been revealed yet. And yeah, it's all good, all in good fun, all in good fun. He's playing with the rogue a little bit, and so they move on. While the party is starting to dig through the items in the reliquary, Chardon, our warrior, and Delg decide they're going to just continue on, and they go down. They have two options. There's a space in the wall leading to the left, and to the right. They take the right path, and they start into the prison area where cultists would keep prisoners shackled before sacrificing them. And it's empty now, though, minus some bones and a skeleton. And they do end up finding a small golden ring that, just for flavor, I decided to give it a minor magical attribute that, when placed on the finger, it turns invisible. So yeah, I tell him it's a ring of invisibility, and yeah, it is. It turns invisible when you put it on. And I didn't add any value to it, just something for a fun little flavor. And on their way out, passive perception didn't do much for me, but I had Chardon roll me a perception check just as they're leaving out the corner of his eye. Well, not at the corner of his eye, but as he's passing through a certain area of the prison, he does notice that the chanting that they've been hearing since the floor before, I think I failed to mention that, sorry, has gotten especially louder in just this one area of the prison, and he looks over and thinks he can tell that the wall in the back of this particular cell would break through into some sort of hidden passageway. So they could return back to the reliquary and head down the other path and find that it leads down a ramp into 2 feet of water right in front of a large metal portcullis. And Delg, the sorcerer, decides, well, there's chanting in this next room. They've been hearing it for a while. It's especially loud now. I think he assumed that whatever would be in the next room would be standing in 2 feet of water, so he uses his one remaining spell slot to cast Witch Bolt into the water, and just cook it for the full duration possible of the spell, which I believe is 1 minute. And yeah, so we figured out, that'd be so many extra amount of rounds, and gave him that many die 12 to roll. Added it all up, it was like 54 damage. And I decided, once someone enters this room, the chanting is supposed to stop immediately. I decided to stop it then, because he had affected the room. And so in his mind, he's dealt 54 damage to something and killed it because it's no longer chanting. And so then we actually took a short break at that point and moved on. When we came back, that they were going to... Graham was going to attempt to just lift this door and walk in to see what's going on. And he rolled like a 22 on his strength check. It's a freaking bard. But whatever, that's fine. So yeah, he lifts this door, and they start moving through. And of course, I start investigating. There's it's about a 40 by 40 foot room with a 5 foot platform wrapped around 2 sides of it, each opposing sides of it, with a large dais in the center and a stone altar that had dried blood on it, and manacles and chains hanging from the ceiling. Clearly this is where cultists had been sacrificing things to the Dark Lord prior to this. And as they're searching, Berdrick starts to investigate this. He takes a step onto the dais, and immediately from the shadows appears 13 cultists brandishing black fire torches and chanting, "One must die, one must die, one must die." And it's coming to a pretty creepy climax here as everything comes to a close in this exploration part of the dungeon. And he says, "Well, I'm a paladin." He tells me in out of player, as a player, not character. He tells me, he says, "I feel like I would be compelled to destroy this evil altar." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, there's a couple of options that could take place in this part of the adventure. Red is written. They can either find some way to comply with the cultists and kill something on the altar, or just deny it altogether. And I figure, well, what a better way to deny the cultists than to just smash the altar. Something completely paladin-esque. I loved it. Give the boy inspiration, and I have him just roll a regular damage versus inanimate object. He smashes it to smithereens. The cultists vanish, summoning Lorgoth the Decayer, we awaken thee. They chant simultaneously as they vanish. And I had a really good combat sound set queued up on Sirenscape, bringing in just some snarling, roaring nastiness. I didn't really care for what, in the book, it's supposed to be a shambling mound. That doesn't sound mean enough, so I found a picture I could pull together of just this giant being made of nothing but bones and viscera and dead bodies, and had that be what's attacking. And it's in my mind and described to the players, it's the remains of all of the things that had been sacrificed in the name of the Dark Lord for this cult. And it's just snarling and spitting and growling at them. And we roll initiative. And Graham takes it upon himself to have told the other players, whatever happens in this next room, try to stay 15 feet away from me. I believe he was trying to set up a thunder wave to attack whatever. I think just whatever he was eyeballing that spell. He wanted to use it, so he just charges right up front and just lays a thunder wave on this thing. And of course, I apologize for my ignorance. I need to study a little better. I need to look at the spell, because the way we're reading it, it explodes in a 15-foot area from you, meaning that his son, the player Sam, the paladin Berdrick, is well within that range behind him. Berdrick fails his save, flat on his butt, takes a decent amount of damage, and he's out. So, this also pushes Lorgoth back into its little cubbyhole it emerged from, and combat continues. I believe it was Beatrix again that used her healing to rise Berdrick, and he gets up, and the rest of the party starts attacking this thing. Ricklin's firing arrows at it. Delg is casting his Ray of Frost. And Chardon, when we come to his turn, he's actually taken another way. He's decided he's going to go back into the prison and bust through that wall that he believes he's found a secret passage to. And so he makes his way around and makes an easy DC roll, strength check to get through the wall, and he just busts through. And very dramatic. I loved it. And so yeah, after about a round or two of me hitting things with this giant being Lorgoth, they're starting to realize this thing's hitting us pretty hard. And at that point, Berdrick had made it back to his feet, and Beatrix, had realized that she also had the Thunderwave spell, and when she cast it, she hits Berdrick again. And so he gets slapped back and forth, i.e., I'm going to subclause the title of this episode, AC/DC's Thunderstruck, in some way or another without trying to incur any copyright gods. But it's because, again, he got knocked clean off his feet, and I believe he was unconscious again from that. And at this point, they realize, man, we really need to get out of here. And they start making their way out of the room. And as in doing so, they were having some difficulty because people kept getting dropped. And I believe it was Delg decided to take out one of the support pillars for the room, because they're 2 stories down in this basement. He figures if he takes out this support pillar, maybe they can drop some ceiling on this monster, which they succeed in. And I roll for the dexterity saving throw on a shambling mound isn't the greatest, and he fails, of course, and I call him pinned for the moment. And they start making their way out, and Berdrick's still down at this point. Rickvin is down, and so they make their way back into the reliquary. Finally, eventually do, and they'd had some healing potions they found in the cult leader's chambers. And so they pour one down the throat of Rickman. She springs to and just starts bolting out because things are getting pretty serious down here. They realize they need to get out of this dungeon. They're done. They need to leave. And the walls have started to shake, and the particles and dusts have started falling from the ceiling. Cracks are forming, and now they've collapsed the ceiling. I'm sure that's not helping the stability of anything. And all at once, I actually we run a digital tabletop in the middle of our table, and I take the map and shift it one square to the west as the whole house jostles to the one side, and give them a dexterity saving throw. Those who fail fall prone, and I believe it only got Trixie, but it was for good effect. And I've queued up some pretty good chase scene music as trying to escalate the tension. So as we run, we just try to run out of this mansion, this house. And so they make their way out, and I believe at this point, Berdrick is still down. In fact, until Graham got to him with a potion, Agmon was actually kind of dragging him behind him, trying to get him out as well. It was just really good teamwork. I love to see it, and especially picturing this older at least, white-haired warlock dragging a paladin by the boot, I'm assuming. It's great. And eventually Graham did get the potion into Berdrick, and he got up, and they made their way back up into the first floor of the basement, which then they decided to take the secret passageway that Delg had been hiding in, and they make their way into the wolf's den, the den from the first floor. And the walls have gone, the house has gone from clean and pristine to just rotten and foul and filthy, and the walls are rotting away, and the fireplace is spewing forth just disgusting poisonous clouds of ash, and actually a couple of them took damage from that. And the doors have been replaced by spinning scythes that are slicing back and forth, and a couple of them make their dexterity saving throws and make it through the first door. And meanwhile, Legmond and Chardon decide they're just going to bust through this wall because they can remember it leads right into the foyer where they can get out of the house. And they succeed in that attack and make their way out. They get out through there. And of course, if you've read the book, breaking the wall releases a swarm of rats which attacked each of them as they passed by. And the majority of the group gets out of the house that way. Meanwhile, Delg and Rickvin are stuck in the main hall, just at the bottom of the spiral staircase. This house is going from bad to worse. It's trembling, it's shaking. More smoke is issuing from a fireplace in this room as well. And they have to make their way through two sets of double-bladed doors, which are just slamming shut, just trying to kill anything that passes through them. And Rickvin rolls through her dexterity like a champ, and makes his way out of the house. And Delg's the last one remaining, and he uses Mage Hand creatively in a good way to slow down the blade so he can make his way through the first set of doors, and just flubs it on the last roll. And I roll some 2d10 damage to see what it does to him, and it downs him. It just nails him, and so he goes unconscious, and Chardon heroically throws himself back into the house and pulls him out. And they make their way finally back out of the house, and everyone feels safe, and they've made their way free, and the house crumbles in on top of itself and just collapses into a giant plume of smoke and dust and ash. Meanwhile, I have a Barovian, just commoner, walk by with his pushcart, and he looks up at the party and says, "Ha! Welcome to Barovia. Have a nice day." And that's where we called it. So guys, thanks for watching. We're going to have more probably. I believe we're going to try to do our next session on the 1st of July. And of course, we'll have more videos for you between now and then. We're going to see if maybe we can't get a Google Hangout to talk about the wonderful Death House experience and see what the party thought of it, because now they're going to be moving on to level 3. A lot of choices to be made. So please like, comment, and subscribe below. If you like what you saw, please help spread the word about Tef's Tavern. We love your guys' support. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.